Hey everybody, what's going on? You're back with your drunk Uncle Redneck, Zach Leary. Today is Tuesday, January 19th, 2021. This is episode 39 of the Drunk Uncle Redneck podcast entitled BTA on Anarchism. Yeah, today we're going to be starting a new book. We've just finished Anatomy of the State by Murray Rothbard last week. Today we're going to start on Anarchism by Noam Chomsky. Now, I'm not going to read you this entire book because a majority of this is about the Spanish Revolution. Chomsky criticizing people historians who documented and wrote on that war, their bias, which leaned toward the establishment. You know, they kind of wrote things in a way that favored the communists who stepped in and kind of starved out the anarchists, the good anarchists, the nice ones, the good guys who were trying to take over Spain. Yeah, that's what I said. I said they were the good guys. Anarchists are the good guys. Guys, that's just the way the world works. All right? So, we're just going to read chapter 5 here because I just think it's so damn good. All right? It's called Language and Freedom. And quote, "When I was invited to speak on the topic language and freedom, I was puzzled and intrigued. Most of my professional life has been devoted to the study of language. There would be no great difficulty in finding a topic to discuss in that domain, and there is much to say about the problems of freedom and liberation as they pose themselves to us and to others in the mid-20th century. What is troublesome in the title of this lecture is the conjunction. In what way are language and freedom to be interconnected? As a preliminary, let me say just a word about the contemporary study of language as I see it. There are many aspects of language and language use that raise intriguing questions, but in my judgment, only a few have so far led to productive theoretical work. In particular, our deepest insights are in the area of formal grammatical structure. A person who knows a language has acquired a system of rules and principles, a generative grammar in technical terms, that associates sound and meaning in some specific fashion. There are many reasonably well-founded and, I think, rather enlightening hypotheses as to the character of such grammars for quite a number of languages. Furthermore, there has been a renewal of interest in universal grammar, interpreted now as the theory that tries to specify the general properties of these languages that can be learned in the normal way by humans. Here, too, significant progress has been achieved. The subject is of particular importance. It is appropriate to regard universal grammar as the study of one of the essential faculties of mind. It is therefore extremely interesting to discover, as I believe we do, that the principles of universal grammar are rich, abstract, and restrictive, and can be used to construct principled explanations for a variety of phenomena. At the present stage of our understanding, if language is to provide a springboard for the investigation of other problems of man, it is these aspects of language to which we will have to turn our attention, for the simple reason that it is only these aspects that are reasonably well understood. In another sense, the study of formal properties of language reveals something of the nature of man in a negative way. It underscores with great clarity the limits of our understanding of those qualities of mind that are apparently unique to man and that must enter into his cultural achievements in an intimate, if still quite obscure, manner. In searching for a point of departure, one turns naturally to a period in history of Western thought when it was possible to believe that the thought of making freedom the sum and substance of philosophy has emancipated the human spirit in all its relationships and has given to science in all its parts a more powerful reorientation than any earlier revolution. The word revolution bears multiple associations in this passage, for Schelling also proclaims that man is born to act and not to speculate. And when he writes that, quote, the time has come to proclaim to a nobler humanity the freedom of the spirit, and no longer to have patience with men's tearful regrets for their lost chains, end quote. We hear the echoes of the liberation thought and revolutionary acts of the late 18th century. Schelling writes that sorry, that's my well pump. Schelling writes that the beginning and end of all philosophy is freedom. These words are invested with meaning and urgency at a time when men are struggling to cast off their chains, to resist authority that has lost its claim to legitimacy, to construct more humane and more democratic social institutions. It is at such a time that the philosopher may be driven to inquire into the nature of human freedom and its limits, and perhaps to conclude with Schelling that with respect to the human ego, its essence is freedom, and with respect to philosophy, the highest dignity of philosophy consists precisely therein, that it stakes all on human freedom. We are living once again at such a time. A revolutionary ferment is sweeping the so-called Third World, awakening enormous masses from torpor and acquiescence in traditional authority. There are those who feel that the industrial societies as well are ripe for revolutionary change. And I do not refer only to representatives of the new left. See, for example, the remarks of Paul Ricoeur cited in chapter 6. The threat of revolutionary change brings forth repression and reaction. Its signs are evident in varying forms in France and the Soviet Union, in the United States, not least in the city where we are meeting. It is natural, then, that we should consider abstractly the problems of human freedom and turn with interest and serious attention to the thinking of an earlier period when archaic social institutions were subjected to critical analysis and sustained attack. It is natural and appropriate so long as we bear in mind Schelling's admonition. Fancy. The man is born not merely to speculate, but also to act. One of the earliest and most remarkable of the 18th century investigations of freedom and servitude is Rousseau's Discourse on Inequity, 1755. In many ways, a revolutionary tract. In it, he seeks to set forth the origin and progress of inequality, the establishment and abuse of political societies, insofar as these things can be deduced from the nature of man, by the light of reason alone. His conclusions were sufficiently shocking that the judges of the prize competition of the Academy of Dijon, to whom the work was originally submitted, refused to hear the manuscript through. In it, Rousseau challenges the legitimacy of virtually every social institution, as well as individual control of property and wealth. These are usurpations established only on a precarious and abusive right, having been acquired only by force. Force could take them away without the rich having grounds for complaint. Not even property acquired by personal industry is held upon better titles. Against such a claim, one might object, do you not know that a multitude of your brethren die or suffer from need of what you have in excess, and that you needed express and unanimous consent of the human race to appropriate for yourself anything from common subsistence that exceeded your own? It is contrary to the law of nature that a handful of men be glutted with superfluities, while the starving multitude lacks necessities. Rousseau argues that civil society is hardly more than a conspiracy by the rich to guarantee their plunder. Hypocritically, the rich call upon their neighbors to institute regulations of justice and peace to which all are obliged to conform, which make an exception of no one, and which compensate in some way for the caprices of fortune by equally subjecting the powerful and the weak to mutual duties. He said duty. Those laws which, as Anatole France was to say, in their majesty deny to the rich and the poor equally the right to sleep under the bridge at night. But by such arguments the poor and weak were seduced. All ran to meet their chains, thinking they secured their freedom. Thus society and laws gave new fetters to the weak and new forces to the rich, destroyed natural freedom for all time, established forever the law of poverty and inequality, changed a clever usurpation into an irrevocable right, and for the profit of a few ambitious men henceforth subjected the whole human race to work, servitude, and misery. Governments inevitably tend towards arbitrary power as their corruption and extreme limit. Their power is, by its nature, illegitimate, and new revolutions must dissolve the government altogether or bring it closer to its legitimate institution. The uprising that ends by strangling or dethroning a sultan is as lawful an act as those by which he disposed the day before of the lives and goods of his subjects. Force alone maintained him, force alone overthrows him. What is interesting in the present connection is the path that Rousseau follows to reach these conclusions. By the light of reason alone, beginning with his ideas about the nature of man. He wants to see man as nature formed him. It is from the nature of man that the principles of natural right and the foundations of social existence must be deduced. This is where I'm stopping for this video. Some of you have made it this far, maybe. This is where shit gets good. This is the part. I didn't realize there was so much other shit in a chapter before the tasty stuff. That's what I want you to get, that tasty stuff. I want you to eat that shit right up. So come back for the next one. You want to hear this episode on your ears without looking at my face? You can do that at drunkuncleredneck.com, derp.blueberry.net. I'm working on getting drunkuncleredneck.com fixed. I've been having some problems with it. I'm talking to a guy in a couple of minutes. Actually, I might be late, so I gotta go. I love you. Bye.